Afternoon, everybody.
Hello, 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 hello. Hopefully you're all well. For those joining us in the Northern Hemisphere, you'll probably recognise this woolly jumper and
We're having snow this weekend.
Bravo. Anybody who's joining us from somewhere slightly more exotic and warmer, let us know in the chat. Please do use your chat throughout this session. Anybody who's come to some of our conference wrap-up ones before, you'll probably know what to expect, which is going to be lots of different things. And in fact, what we will be doing is it's not 10. And the reason why, you're going to find out on the next slide why. So it's the top 9 themes from the PMO conference that happened in Edinburgh at the beginning of November. So lovely to be back in Edinburgh again. You can see some of the pictures there slightly in the background with that bizarre selfie that I can't take a picture like that without opening my mouth. So but that was towards the end of the day, end of the 2 days. So what we're going to share in this session over the next 55 minutes or so, it's just some of the things that we kind of collected together, like looking at what some of the people were talking about and sharing maybe, you know, a slide or two or something from their session. I think it gives us an idea as PMO people where, you know, other people are focusing. Hopefully it will give you some ideas. If you're listening to something you think, yeah, this is not for me, don't worry, we'll be on to the next thing before you know it, because there's, you can see there's 9 different things. And the reason why it's 9 is just because I wanted a nice box. I wanted a nice box shape like that. There is actually a lot more that I could have pulled out, but yeah, it's that's the reason why. And these are some of the things that we were covered off on the day. So for if you were there, you know, please do drop into chat if you recognise some of the things you listened to. Everybody's, you know, always there, so now got availability for the decks and the presentations and everything, and we will be dripping them out over the course of the next few months as well. So yeah, these are some of the things you can expect to hear. But before we get into that, let's just have a look at get a feel for the actual day itself with our little short. There's many reasons why people choose to come along to a PMO conference. One of them is just about being with your own tribe. Everybody here works in PMOs, maybe in different organisations, different industries, but one thing that ties them together is the fact that they all love working in PMO and want to do better at what they do for themselves and their organisations.
It's always a good community, always a good vibe at this show. People are really keen to learn. We've tried Edinburgh and so far it's been great. It's a smaller group, that means you get a little bit more personal time with each person. And again, the vibe is great and people are really keen to learn and share knowledge and exchange ideas.
It's been an incredible day again. in Edinburgh. We've had a lot of conversations with a lot of potential clients talking about the challenges they're facing and how we can help them with it. I love to be here. We were here last year, we're here again now, and I look forward to being back next year.
Just taking in so much information, meeting lots of new people who we've never spoken to, listening to some new speakers and getting some really good insights into how other people manage their careers and their PMOs. So hopefully we'll see you here next year.
Right, so hopefully it gives you a feel for what it looked like. Bit of a shaky camera angle, things going on there, but you got the general gist of it. So let's have a look at our first ups. And I pulled these from the PMO Learn session, which was the day before the actual conference. I apologise for the images there. They seem to have been a bit rubbish when they upload and things. But essentially, for the basics, there's two. For what we've found over the years is that it is the basics that PMO practitioners need to make sure that they've got covered off in terms of their knowledge, their understanding, their experience, all that kind of good stuff. It's great for PMOs to be, there's lots of things that you could be doing that's kind of feels like more, there's this old data stuff and AI things, all these exciting stuff. But, the bottom line is it's the basics. So what we do with PMO Learn, it brings 4 different kind of classrooms, sessions. You have a teacher, they teach you something for an hour, and then there's a practical exercise. What you're seeing on the screen right now was something that was given in the practical exercise, and here was the exercise. So this is getting people into the working in tables, with people that they most likely don't know, never met before, and starting to work together on exercises. And actually, with things like this, yes, the exercise is useful, but what we've found is that, again, having the opportunity to properly speak to each other, to learn other people's perspectives is what's been really interesting for people as they navigate their way through this thing that we call a PMO career. There are many ways and different ways of doing some of these things. And I think sometimes we can go so far on a training course and the textbooks and all of that kind of good stuff. But actually, it is being able to have some conversations and taking away ideas from other people. But, we're all doing risk management of some style, degree, description. And this is, again, just to give you a feel for what we're talking about when it says we do need to be thinking about the basics. So risk management is something that we focused on a lot more in 2023 at the House of PMO, and there's already some sessions that you can go and have a look at there. One of the other ones that it feels like we've made a few more leaps and bounds in the right kind of direction for helping people in PMO get to grip with this subject around governance. We had Ross Garland join us again, but this time because he was doing a more in-depth session around some of the key aspects of governance. Here you can see that, what is it that PMOs should be doing or need to be getting involved in around governance. Ross then went through some different principles, which then people were, again, working on tables, taking some of the principles and interestingly thinking about. So if we look at some of the principles around, for example, around stakeholder management, stakeholder engagement, and about the relationship of building, with different stakeholders, the session was about how, what is it that the PMO would be offering support-wise in that kind of situation. But more crucially, and I think this is where the thinking's moving on in terms of PMO, is what kind of PMO services you would be offering. So if you look at this kind of list, it's saying, well, okay, so what kind of services would that PMO be creating, rolling out to the organization in order to be able to support some of these key things around governance? Yeah, so a really good, step back from the day job for the day and start to look at some of the key things that really is what the PMO should be doing well. These are the basics. We should have these covered, and which risk management and governance were one of them. Another one on the day was resource management, and also we looked at process improvement as well. So from that, I hope that you can see there's a lot of buzz around the rooms, a lot of workshop type activity. You can see good old post-it notes came out. These are some of the things that people were, that talking about. Eileen, you also had a comment there on the, that's on the governance one, I'm assuming, around sponsors. Yeah. You're on mute, my dear.
That's because you muted me. I think very much in terms of from an organisation perspective, PMO, we often work out kind of who gets to do what, do the kind of the governance bodies. And I think there's a still amount of work for a lot of PMOs to actually get the governance structure set up so the sponsor becomes accountable for their role rather than try and compensate for the sponsor not doing their role. So I think there's potentially some work we can do, and we're already starting to look at what the PMO Learn topics are going to be for the next session. So I'm definitely thinking about doing something around sponsorship and getting sponsorship well established in the in organisations.
You'll obviously one slide that I think we also put this one out in the LinkedIn group. That's, again, if you're not part of our LinkedIn group, you should make sure you become part of it. Just do a search for LinkedIn House of PMO Group and you'll be able to find us and join us. That picture there, 6 or 16, that was all in relation to, again, around stakeholder management relationships, that kind of thing, talking about decisions being made, obviously governance, decision making, about the difference between, is it 6 or 16 people? Yeah, so just thinking about, how dynamics change, what needs to change in terms of, way that decisions get made in that kind of grouping. So it's that kind of thing where you've got that opportunity to just delve in a little bit more. And again, if governance is your thing at the minute, if you're not already familiar with Ross and the book that came out, but the sessions in the House of PMO Library, but check out the Project Program and Portfolio Governance book that got launched by TSO earlier in the year. Okay, so on to the next one then, which is about maturity. Now, this was the session, again, still on PMO Learn at this time. Bill Dow joined us from Seattle. Bill has written a number of books around PMO. One of the things that he really enjoys, he's still a working practitioner, is this thing about maturity of PMO. And he believes that it comes through process improvement, which, again, is something that I think we're going to see more in 2024. There's certainly been making some headways in how our thinking and the practicalities of what we mean when we talk about PMOs making those kind of process improvements and what are we actually talking about. But Bill here puts a really good slant on it, which is about every PMO member dedicating 5% of their time to mature the PMO. And what we're talking about is probably maturity in these kind of areas. It talked again about, if you look at what the 5% of people's time is, you're probably looking at about 1 to 2 hours a week. And if you think about whether it's a possibility for PMO team members to be doing that kind of activity, because it is the PMO that has to do some work in terms of not only process improvement in terms of the PMO, but actually thinking about some of the process improvement work that needs to go on across our, whether it's a large change delivery department or just a team of maybe 1 or 2 project managers, whatever it might be. There's always room for improvement. He just talked and shared a little bit in that session as well about keeping that log going, who's going to be working on it, what some of the process areas are, what it's impacting, and keeping that kind of record of what's actually going on. But I think it focuses the mind in terms of things like PMO. You have your team meetings, hopefully, maybe a monthly basis or a quarterly basis, or PMO team days away, all of those kind of things. This is an ideal opportunity to kind of give some focus to some of the things that are really going to make a difference in terms of improving how the PMO does its work, but also how the PMO can instigate process improvement work for the wider good of a delivery organization. So again, maturity, we hear this quite a lot, don't we, Eileen, about PMO maturity and can you do maturity assessment. That's just one of the questions that probably pops up when you see that word maturity.
And it is, and it's really interesting that there's lots of kind of philosophical debates about whether, you know, you measure the maturity of the PMO or whether you actually measure the maturity of the organization's capability to deliver projects, programs, and portfolios. And I think, you know, kind of where the thinking seems to be, and which I agree with, is that actually, when you're assessing the PMO, what you're trying to assess is the PMO doing the right thing for the organization? So, you know, you could both be maturity level 1 or both be maturity level 2, which says something about what the PMO needs to be doing to continue to improve. But actually, it's organizational context as well that really says, are the PMO really effective in their role within the organization? And we've always said that, you know, each PMO is unique, and the challenge is understanding what you should be for your organization and then developing the roadmap to move to that.
I think one of the things we'll be looking at in 2024 is actually having a bit more of a structured approach to how process improvement is done. So that's leaning heavily on things like Lean, Six Sigma, that kind of thing. And I think
lessons learned.
Lessons learned, yes, absolutely. So there's a number of different things that we can be, you know, practical things we can be using to help us in this process improvement area. So good to have, again, a different perspective. It's not something that we've covered before. On to the opening keynote, and it was a very people focused opening keynote this year for Edinburgh, which is lovely to see. You know, in London earlier on, if you managed to see that one, it was all very much about the future of PMO and what's going to happen with the PMO, and you know, the advance of AI and all that kind of stuff. And actually with Edinburgh, because of its nature of that conference being slightly smaller, it has a different kind of feeling and vibe. It was nice actually to open up on something that was very much about every single person in the room. Bill again took the opening keynote for this one, and he was just looking at you know, we can look at all the different reasons why PMOs fail. And the bottom line is that most research out there that gets done focuses on things like the process, the tools, the templates, all of those kind of things. But actually, it's the people that's the bottom line. It's the people that are working within the PMO that make that PMO, including the people that obviously lead it and manage it as well. So these were some of the 6 different areas that he got people to think about. I thought this was an American thing, but I'd never heard of skip level meetings. Anybody else know what a skip level meeting is? It's to do with that you, I think in those environments where you have a line manager, so that kind of functional manager, and then you've got somebody who works with you on a day-to-day basis. The skip level is about skipping the hierarchy. Yeah, so that's where it comes from. So there you go. You've learned something new today.
It's essentially like a sponsor having a meeting with the project team without the project manager there.
Yeah, it's that kind of thing, totally. And what I did really like was he talked about how he himself, in his role as a PMO manager, has developed his own kind of PMO leadership program for his own team. So this is not necessarily something that is coming from leadership from the corporate level. This is about leadership program that he's got within his PMO. He's thinking about, how can I get my next, you know, my people within the PMO moving onwards and upwards, and devising certain, you know, a program that allows them to think about this. Here's different opportunity. And these opportunities are all going to help you make those advances that you need to be making. And it'll be things like, you know, that there's an opportunity to be in a higher level executive meeting that you wouldn't normally be in as a PMO analyst, for example. Getting business level experience of how execs talking to each other. So lots of different things, and I just thought that were quite nice. If you think about from a PMO manager point of view, if you're sitting here as an analyst or something, wouldn't it be nice actually if a PMO itself devised its own program that will help, you know, the next cohort of people or the next hire that you might have, you know, but you've got your own program, you know, that yes, you do some formal training, but actually here are some on-the-job things that could go into this program. So I really like that. I thought it was a really nice idea. And again, for me, there's lots of different perspectives at the time. I love the buddying thing anyway. I think it's brilliant. For anybody who's got young kids will know that when they go into nursery schools or infant schools, they always get assigned a little friend. It's exactly that kind of thing. But I think, again, is, well, what do you want that to be, and what do you want it to look like, and what are they, what are you expecting the buddying system to how it should actually work, and how long it should go on for. It shouldn't be forever. So what is it? Again, lots of nice things that we don't really talk about in terms of that kind of team level engagement. Got on now from the house itself, which is us. We've never done this before, believe it or not. We've never had any kind of interactive kind of sessions at all at the conference. Do them the day before, we'd never had them at the conference. The reason why, again, Edinburgh, it's different. We had a couple of spaces available, and we thought, you know what, let's try doing some of the things that from a House of PMO point of view. Eileen, this were your...
Let's just be clear. Lindsay says, right, then what can I get Eileen to do at the conference this year? That's where this kind of starts off. But actually, what was really interesting is we wanted to run a couple of kind of roundtable sessions, different in terms of PMO Learn, because we're not actually providing any learning. We're basically just kind of setting them down at a table with a task to do. And what was fascinating is that for the first session, we had twice as many people turn up to the room as we could actually contain. So that was really interesting. So the first session I ran, which was about the service catalogue. So for those of you who are aware, who are not aware, we've taken the service catalogue. So just a quick kind of just while I get the new one, just to know that we've republished it now under the House of PMO, trying to get it there so people can see it. No, the camera's, there we go, you can see it's got a slightly different cover on now. But we've also kicked off a project. I know we've got a couple of the team on the call today, where we're reviewing the service catalogue, expanding it, extending it, revising it, rather than it being kind of just Stuart Stixon's view of the world. We're going to do a community view. And so I thought it was a good opportunity just to get a bunch of people who hadn't necessarily volunteered to work on the project to actually kind of just look at a couple of those services about their input. So they provided some really interesting ones, and actually from an exercise for them, it's really useful to start thinking about how they pulled their service catalogue together and the types of information they had. So you did the second one, Lindsay, on self-assessments.
Yeah, I'll tell you about mine in a second. What's your third one? What's the second?
So the third one is based on for those of you who no doubt have seen it and loved it, the PMO competency framework. As a kind of a standard offering we had in the competency framework, and it's in there, is the standard role levels, which is PMO administrator, PMO analyst, PMO manager, and PMO director. And what we always wanted to do, and again, this was kind of our first starting to look at it, was actually we recognized typically at PMO analyst level, what are the specialist roles that we have? So we looked specifically at just a couple which we saw were the most common. The reporting role, because every PMO does reporting. So, you know, if that was going to be your particularly focus, what does a reporting role look like? And we also looked at the risk management role. So again, we're starting now that based on the kind of the amount of work we did on the day, there's not enough kind of, it hasn't been substantiated enough and validated to be able to kind of go out there and publish, but it's kind of, we're starting to look now at some of those kind of specialist roles. And again, from a benefit of the delegates' perspective coming to do that, when you're trying to write role descriptions for the people who are in your team, doing it based on a competency framework where you've got some kind of specific terminology that you might want to pick up and an understanding of the types of things that they might want to do. It was really interesting to kind of for the kind of the small groups to kind of have a go at writing those role descriptions for the first time.
Okay, great. And mine was very much about doing self-assessments. I know you've probably seen, you know, some of the sessions you've already done about how to do a self-assessment based on the competency framework. You know, for a lot of people, again, in the room, a lot of people had not seen it, you know, and not had a chance to really, you know, to think about doing a self-assessment. Again, there is stuff already on the House of PMO website that you can go and have a look at the top level. It talks there about doing a self-assessment, certainly more in the library. This time, actually, it was getting people to think a little bit different. We talked about reflection because that's where a lot of this stuff comes from. But if you're going to do a self-assessment against something like the got to have that time to think about, well, what have I done? Like, you know, how would I even begin to assess myself? So we kind of flipped it on its head a little bit. And we had an exercise. We gave them this scenario. And this scenario basically gives you the flip side to it. So rather than sitting there and looking and doing, you know, I've got, here's all these competencies and I'm going to kind of score myself against them. The other way to think about it is, you know, well, what is it that I do? And this is probably, you know, a fairly typical scenario. I'm sure you'll, again, it wouldn't be that difficult or too much of a leap for you to create your own scenario based on your actual role and what you do. And then from here, what we did as a group was getting to think about and pinpoint, well, what competencies go into being able to provide this role, to perform, you know, to carry out this scenario. But not only that is the knowledge, the skills and the behaviours, because I think half the battle with a self-assessment is not going down a self-assessment and giving it a tick for everything that you think you've got. The hardest bit is actually being able to evidence it, which is why actually on the flip side and actually thinking of the scenario first, it's like, well, there you go, you've got your evidence straight away. Here's the scenario, you know, you exactly, until you're just trying to backtrack and think, right, okay, so from this space, what kind of competencies, knowledge, skills and behaviours would you need? So it's a nice way to do it. And I think what we're probably going to do with this kind of gave me the idea. I think we're going to do a nice session for about an hour, and we're going to pick different kinds of scenarios that will probably feel very similar to things that you're doing yourself. And then we'll together, we can start to look at and pull out some of the competencies so you can do that exercise yourself. But it went down really well. Yeah, so that was us taking the floor for a change. Maybe that's something we should do more often. It seemed to work okay, but we'll see. So we can't get away from this data thing. Data. Right. So it came up obviously in a lot of different people's sessions. How could it not? This particular session that you can see there in the back was actually from Atkins. They have been doing a lot of work on this particular element. They've also been making links with other organizations that are similar to them that are also trying to do this, so kind of industry, like, you know, benchmarking, as it were. This is their problem. I'm sure you can see in this lots of things that will feel familiar. So, you know, just making sure that we're kind of on the same page. And then they started to talk about what it is that they've been doing. And so quite a technical presentation, which, you know, again, for some, it's not for everybody. But if you are trying to do this kind of thing, they did kind of start at the basics. And one of the main outcomes for them out of their industrial benchmarking thing is actually trying to understand what the data culture is. You know, so what is the culture, your organization's culture, and it's you know, what is its data culture, and trying to get to grips with what that means. There's a lot of reading out there. You can just do a Google search for data cultures in organizations. There's a lot of stuff there, but for them that was a major step forward to understand before they started to then think about, you know, what our flow modeling or flow model would look like. So again, these kind of exercises, I think, these kind of sessions are important, you know, for conferences like this, because sometimes it feels like, are we heading in the right direction? Or actually, we're not doing anything about this at the moment, but who knows what might be coming around the corner in the next few months. It gives you a starter that you can look at other people's experiences and see what they're doing. So there's quite a lot in that session, which again will be coming out in the library. But I don't think this data thing is going to go away. It's certainly becoming more of a prominent subject, not only for organizations, but for project management. And then by rights, it's going to be PMO, because obviously what do we report on? Data. So yeah, so track's been made there. But yeah, really interesting session from them, and them sharing their pain points as well. So next one, we had the wonderful John McIntyre giving his the business agility. This is John's of anybody who dials into PMO Hothouse will know John. John's focus, passions and stuff have been very much around agility. Whether you want to call that kind of enterprise agility, EA, as I found out the other day, is the shortened version of it. But again, I think PMOs, a lot of PMOs are dealing with or trying to get to grips with, at the moment, there's that Scrum level, kind of project level type stuff that's going on. But also this kind of like bigger level, the more enterprise level agility is stuff where a lot of people have latched onto SAFe, which that might be your preference too. But this presentation was very much about from a PMO's point of view, rather than one obviously trying to get to grips with understanding where that business is trying to go, which is looking to the business to what are the problems that need to be solved, and from that, where can the PMO actually solve them. John actually talked again about how the PMO can be a catalyst for a lot of this stuff within an organization. He talked a little about systems thinking, which again seems to be something that goes kind of hand in hand with this whole kind of business agility stuff. And again, so what SIS from a PMO point of view, where's the support that's needed for our organizations? All of these things can feel very new and different. It's almost like I went to a session the other week in Manchester on a meetup after work about business agility. And honestly, it were almost like, I know we get told off for doing this in kind of PMO and project management, in that we talk in project management speak and that the business doesn't understand it. I walked into that meeting, I had no clue about half of the things they were talking about, because it were acronym after acronym, theory about this, that, and the other. Honestly, some of the it were madness. But again, from a PMO point of view, we kind of need to understand, almost like it's learning a new language and learning a new way of how change is getting delivered. He brought it back to something that we can probably feel like we know and love, which is the bottom line with any kind of enterprise level, agile approaches to things being delivered. Within all of that kind of stuff is that it all still needs to be prioritized. So there's still that portfolio management element to all of this, which probably feels like we're on safer ground from a PMO point of view. So we did talk about that. And again, they bring in other things like OKRs and stuff, which again, over the years, we have been doing a lot of that. There is stuff in the library about that kind of approach. And again, the other thing from a PMO point of view is that you're probably not necessarily working at that. Yeah, do your Scrum teams need that kind of support from PMO? Don't know. Some might, some might. But it looks like the PMO is moving up the chain a little bit to this level stuff. This is where the real benefit can come for that kind of organization, which is around that kind of strategic planning piece, that portfolio management piece, prioritizing work, all of that kind of thing, which is why I think over the last few years, you've certainly got more PMOs that are looking at the kind of agile PMO, which is the thing from SAFe and value stream level type stuff as well. So, it was an interesting one for people that might be dipping their toe. So yeah, and John does it in his usual eclectic style, which keeps us. It included puppies and things like that. And so, what more could you want? Right, this is a question for Eileen. Do you know what this is, Eileen? Did you come across this before? You're on mute, my dear. I'm going to totally put you on the spot, by the way, and she's not seeing me.
No, I don't know. I recognise the name, and I'm sure when you mention it, I shall know what it is.
Is that any better?
What?
There's a triangle come up.
No, I will lie then. Oh, that's why I know it, because it's from I know the term Lencioni because he writes the dysfunctional teams, doesn't he, and how to overcome them. Yes.
Yeah.
So I've read about it. I don't recognise the triangle as such, but yes, so the Lencioni is the guy who wrote the book. Yes.
Yes, that's right. And this is a session about lessons learned, believe it or not, from Jacobs, and Tom Quinn talked about different aspects of where the lessons were. But the really interesting thing in the session, he says, well, I'm assuming everybody knows this, and then puts this up, and I'm like, well, no. So yeah, basically what he was talking about was from a lessons learned point of view. I mean, he's got a really great session about like lots of lessons learned across different aspects of projects. That's definitely there. But this was just a reminder for me, and certainly where PMOs are, if you're running these kind of lessons learned things, or you're trying to support teams in doing some kind of lessons learned or retrospectives or whatever it is that you want to call it, that actually there's that recognition that there's a lot of kind of people and behavioral elements to sessions like that. And often it's, do we understand enough, or do we focus too much on the process? So you can imagine, you know, if you're going to, we're going to do a lessons learned exercise. We get everybody together and we do, you know, you start doing, do we give enough thought to how we are putting together sessions like that, but do take on account things like, you know, dysfunctional teams, and what does that mean, and, you know, what needs to be, you know, what kind of things may have been going on within the team. It means that actually we're never going to learn a lesson from this, because actually people are not sharing, people are not giving us what, you know, where things might have gone wrong, or how we could have been improved, or any of that kind of stuff. So you kind of set the scene for this kind of session. But I just thought it was interesting that I love a picture. And I love a little like thing like this where you can, yeah, okay, all right, it's pretty easy to understand. But yeah, if you're not familiar with it, obviously this was about lessons learned. But again, I don't know if you working within your organisation, do you recognise that some of these things that are going on, it might be one to add to your bookshelf if you're thinking about some of the more behavioral development you could probably be doing. But again, with this is, you know, sometimes the PMO needs to be doing more to be able to get the best out of a lessons learned thing. And that can be that different exercises that get more people talking, doing it in certain ways that people feel more free to be able to put down things that might have gone wrong, all of that kind of good stuff. So there you go. So there was another element that I'd not come across before. Still on to people then. We had a closing keynote from a guy called Nick Fewins, who has a book called Team Lead Succeed. Why would you not have something about teams? But he was doing a good session for us, all about, you know, kind of PMO teams. It's also about individuals, obviously, within that setting. So again, entertaining, it's a closing keynote, so you always kind of get that kind of more entertaining type element to it. The book itself, and like a lot of this kind of stuff, I don't know if many of you might be familiar with it. Please do share, again, in chat, if you are using any of this kind of stuff. There are different types of models to do with kind of like the behavioural styles. I know some people in their PMOs have used this kind of stuff before, which was about using but people obviously have different kind of behavioral styles. You can do it as a team, and then you can work out, you know, like what blend have you got within the team in terms of these kind of things. So introvert, extrovert, whether more thinking or more feeling, so maybe more sensing and intuition. He used some cards basically, which ultimately, you know, he was about reading through some cards. There you go. It says Eileen's got a box of cards there. You had to read through them, and these are some of the things that were kind of on the cards that gave you, you know, like any of this stuff. It's some of it feels, yeah, you know, you can probably look at that now and know which kind of one you're in. Some of the things that you were reading, questions and things like that. Obviously, there's going to be stuff where it's not saying that you're just one of those things. It actually gives you kind of like a measure of where you are across the, you know, so you might be more red, and then blue, then the yellow, and then the green. And essentially, it just allowed you to, you know, have a little of a giggle, obviously, within a conference setting like that. But in a more serious note, I think it's a reminder again that this kind of stuff has been really useful for PMO teams. In fact, any team within an organization, but we're talking about PMOs. So this is about, you know, the blend of people that you have within your team, who may be better at certain tasks, activities, certain services, or might be better in certain situations, you know, that kind of thing. But again, Team Lead Succeed, everybody got a copy of the book. And again, it's the behavioral stuff is a nice thing to be focused on at conferences, because we know we don't focus enough on it and put some of our spend when we're doing our formal training for the year. We don't do a lot of this kind of thing. So sometimes going to a conference is the only way that you might be, having some time out to actually think about some of this stuff. What do you think to that? Can you remember, Eileen, what I think I remember what yours came out at? You want to share?
I'm a bit red. But it's like, as you said, it's, kind of, there's good days and bad days. So on a good day, I can be really helpful. On a bad day, I can be, as it says here, I know you put the nice ones on your side, but on the bad day, I can be a bit abrupt, aggressive, and overbearing. Now, I'm sure you don't recognize any of those things about me, Lindsay, at all. Yes, in terms of kind of what I am. And I think the other thing I think we talked about as well is that as you get older, you learn to flex amongst these, and I think you just have to recognize that everybody still has their own, the one they feel kind of most comfortable in, and the one that they kind of will go to when they're under kind of periods of stress. And it's good to kind of practice getting, kind of how you work with other people within your team or your stakeholders, but also where you've got a team. And I do an exercise, funny enough, I do some work with another organization, and we look at what happens if you end up with a small team of 4 reds, because that can be a real challenge, or you end up with kind of 4 yellows, and how do you kind of compensate? So I love this kind of thing, but I think it's nice to kind of sit back and reflect in terms of you always have to do it under the old adage that says all models are wrong, but some are useful. So it's not about kind of putting people in boxes and saying that's where they sit. It's about saying, as somebody was saying in chat, it's about those insights that kind of say, well, actually, this tells me a little bit more about me, about the people that I'm working with, and how best we can kind of use their kind of skills, their particular attributes to best effect.
Yeah, I mean, you can see now so Leslie's, they use insights discovery. So that's one that you could have a look at. Strength deployment inventory, another one from Becca. Again, there are different things out there, and sometimes these kind of things are good in a team away day, but there is certainly a lot that based on the colours as well. But yeah, it's just always a nice way to finish a conference. What's always a nice way, from having a conference, and I'm coming. This is number 9 on my list, so we're nearly at the end. There were obviously case studies, and we will continue to have those, and some of them, are not about having all the right answers. Some of them are not about, that we think we've been through most of the journey and we've got this amazing, wonderful thing. Actually, I think for what's worked well at the conferences over the years is actually we just want to see somebody's making some headway. And what is it that made some headway in, and tell us about that bit. This was a session that was just telling us a little bit about their roadmap around the whole data thing. And I know for a lot of people, it's PPM tools. People are, trying to find the right tool, or, going through that entire process can feel a bit of a nightmare. Yes, at a conference we do have sponsored sessions, which are from people, that are exhibiting. It's the only way you can do a conference in this day and age. Is to actually have some of these people doing sessions for you. But we know that a lot of people find them really useful because they're in that kind of place at the minute where they're trying to work out what kind of tooling is going to work. We know that data, AI, all that kind of stuff is something that plays heavily on organizations' mind. But from a PMO point of view, again, a lot of PMOs still don't have PPM tools. They're still working on a lot of spreadsheets. So again, this came from an organization that they wanted to just share on behalf of the PPM tool provider that they've actually gone with, but just some of the the roadmap of what they've had to do and what they've been thinking about, and also things like building their business case. That's the other thing. The PMO can obviously make we think this is the right kind of approach to take, and here's the case for it. It's the decision. Ultimately, the decision's not totally in our hands, but being able to put a big case together, good case together, to get the right kind of tools. It still feels like, you know, there's a battle there, but the PMO is still trying to do the job with one hand tied behind its back. But if we're not going to make the case for, you know, this is what we think it needs, and yes, we know it all links back to maturity of the PMO itself, and do we have all the processes in place that allow us then to be able to use tools to be able to get the best out of those processes, all of that kind of stuff. So those are some of the things there that that we'll only get from being able to have just maybe 45 minutes of somebody's time, and they tell us what they've been doing. There were other sessions there, and unfortunately one of them that we had, the recording didn't work. So rather amazingly, he said he'd do it again for us, and you can come along to that if you'd like to. If you want to go onto the events page on the House of PMO, he's going to come along and do his session, his roadmap, and it was actually about the Scottish census. So again, a PMO program that's just, you know, very town bound, isn't it? But again, it got a nice roadmap of what they did, and kind of bringing in some new stuff that we'd not done before. Yes, it's again, if you want to listen to somebody else having sharing their story, you'd be able to tune into that. And I think that is probably, is it next week or the week after? Can't remember. Have a look at the events page. But yeah, so those were my, oh look, I've got top 10 there. It's top 9. Eileen, do you want to make it top 10? Can you remember from Edinburgh what stood out for you?
Well, the Nick Hewin, I have to say the Nick Hewins for me kind of made it to note for me. But I think, as ever, the underlying purpose of the project is networking with other people across the organizations. And I think what you kind of saw in the video that doesn't necessarily come across is about how much time people really appreciate. And we use this work being amongst their tribe. And, you know, we have a number of people who they're in terms of the providers, the sponsors. We have people who kind of come and help, people who've been with us and kind of been to numbers of conference, and people who turn up for the first time. And it's that networking and actually just being able to relax with people who actually understand what you do is always a great feeling. So if I kind of was, if I was going to kind of add one extra theme, it would be the concept of kind of networking. And I've put in chat as we've gone through, and it was specifically in terms of relation to the kind of the budgeting and mentoring, the value of having a network across your own organization, but actually a network across the PMO industry, you know, so you get those kind of insights and just recognize that, you know, however good we are in our organization, however good what we are, there's still lessons to be learned, not least for when you decide perhaps to move on and do something in a different position, because as we always say, you can't just take what you've done and kind of repeat it elsewhere. So learning from other people is really what it's about.
Yeah, so we're doing it all over again. 2024 will be upon us before we know it. We've got London before that. But all I want to like to do is just a shout out to, if you're sitting here thinking, I've got a roadmap, we've got a journey, we've got a thing, something we've done, we're really proud of, get in touch. You know, if you have had it on your list to get up on the stage and to tell people about this kind of thing for a while, now's your time. Come and talk to me. Like I said, it's not about having the most amazing PMO in the world, because it doesn't exist. Let's be honest. If it did, I'd have that person keynoting. But we do really need to hear from the practitioners who are willing to share their stories. So, and we're doing it again in June in London. Obviously, we'll be back in Edinburgh next year. And you might have noticed that we've also just added a new event in March 2024. If you're working in universities or higher education, or if you know anybody who's working in that space, we're going to have their own one-day conference, again, focusing on challenges that they're facing specifically within higher education. So, you know, it's a lot there, and I'm sure you're probably sitting there and thinking, oh, I wish you could have one in this theme, this bit, and could we have one on that? But yeah, again, if any ideas that you'd like to see as well at a conference in terms of which subjects and things, you can always let us know about that too, and we'll certainly be thinking we're pulling the agenda together right now, so that's certainly for London. So that's it for today. Thank you for joining us. We are actually here again tomorrow at the same time, this time for a kickoff event for people working in the NHS. So yeah, we're doing a few vertical things here at the moment, but yeah, if you know anybody who's working in the NHS in the PMO space, let them know about it. But for now, we will see you next week. Hopefully, if you can join us, check out the events page, and we'll see you soon. All right, take care.
Lovely to see you all.